Today's scripture reading is from Proverbs 3, 1 through 6. My son, don't forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commands, for they will bring you many days, a full life, and well-being. Never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard with God and people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways know him, and he will make your path straight. This is the word of the Lord.
Come on, can we give it up for James, everybody? I almost just tried to drink the microphone here, so give me a sec. All right, what's going on? You guys doing well today? All right, so we're starting a new series. It's always fun starting a new series on the book of Proverbs. Look at somebody and say Proverbs. Proverbs is easily one of the coolest books in the Bible. It's a little bit unfair. I feel like every book that I'm reading, whatever I'm reading at the time, it's like, man, that's the coolest book. Proverbs is awesome. There's no book quite like it in the Bible. If you're looking for someone just to give you like some good one-liners, like, man, Proverbs is the book. I heard a preacher say one time, he said, never read a Bible verse. And I was like, what do you mean, never read a Bible verse? And he said, you always have to read in context. No one likes their words being taken out of context. But it turns out Proverbs is the one book you can just read one verse because it's full of one-liners, wise sayings, how to live life. It answers some of our questions. It gives us wisdom. It gives us guidance. Now, I can tell you, as a parent, I need all the wisdom I can get. My son is 2 years old. He's already asking me questions I don't know the answer to. Kelly said this morning in the bath, he said to her, where does life come from? He is 2 years old, not even 3. Then he followed that up with, where do the bad guys come from? So these are the real questions in life. You got to have some answers. I was driving him the other day to my in-laws' house. Sherry watches him on Thursdays. And he said, Daddy, why does Nana live this way? And I was like, I don't know. Like, she just chose to live that way. And he goes, but why? And I said, well, she likes the country. And he goes, all right, well, why do we live that way? And I was like, I don't know. We're from the suburbs. Like, I don't know what to tell you. He's like holding me hostage. He's like, Daddy, why are green lights green? I was like, I don't know. I was breaking down. I had a mental breakdown. There were so many questions I did not know the answer to. This is what life is like. There's stuff we don't know, decisions that need made, questions that need answered, projects that need completed. And the thing about the book of Proverbs is not so much that it answers all of our questions about life. The Bible answers many questions. But the thing about Proverbs is not that it answers all of our deepest questions about life, but it does give us wisdom for how to navigate the course of our life. So I read a study online. It said that the average person makes 35,000 decisions every day. Now, I tried to look into this. When I tried to look at the sources of this article, it was just a bunch of websites that kind of referenced each other. You know, they say 80% of statistics are made up. So, you know, maybe I'm lying to you. I don't know. But let's just say you make thousands of micro decisions every day. Not just what am I going to wear, what am I going to eat, but every word you say in a conversation, every little turn of the steering wheel when you're on the road, everything in your life is a million decisions. And the truth is, you will not have the audible voice of God for every one of those decisions. In fact, you maybe will never hear the voice of God audibly, maybe ever in your life. I could probably tell you on one hand the number of times that God spoke to me, and it wasn't audible, but it might as well have been to me. Like, it was crystal clear. I could probably tell you on one hand the number of times that's happened. I could probably tell you maybe a dozen times that I had to make a decision and I got a prophetic word from somebody and like, man, someone just spoke to me and like, I knew it was the Lord. Other times, you know, you have a Bible verse. Guess what? You're not going to have a Bible verse for the 35,000 decisions that you have to make every day. Now that would make it a lot easier, although maybe it'd be harder because the Bible would be 1,000,000 pages long. You know what God gives us for all of these decisions? He gives us wisdom so that we can be led by the Holy Spirit to lead a life of human flourishing and abundance. That's what Proverbs is all about. So Proverbs here, it comes from mostly King Solomon, the son of King David, 1,000 years before the time of Jesus. Now, maybe you're sitting here thinking, Joey, what are these wisdom sayings from 3,000 years ago? What do they mean for us today? Haven't we figured out something better by now, something smarter by now? Haven't we advanced beyond some 3,000-year-old Proverbs? Just because you and I have iPhones doesn't mean we're much smarter than people who lived in the past. In fact, we're probably dumber, if I'm going to be honest with you. Just because we have some scientific advancements and some technology doesn't necessarily mean that we are wiser human beings. Now, is our life more comfortable? Absolutely. Is our life more convenient? Absolutely. Some of you know this, my first year in ministry school, I lived in Central America in El Salvador. We had to wash our clothes by hand. Now, if you think about how clean college boys are, and then you add to that hand washing clothes, you can imagine how clean my clothes were that year. I told my mom I cleaned my sheets twice in a whole year. She said, "Are you insane?" I said I had to carry them down a mountain, wash them in a lake, bring them back up the mountain in a heavy, wet load of laundry. No, I wasn't washing my sheets more than that. My mother's shaking her head at me right now. She's like, "I raised you better." Listen, modern life is so easy compared to the way people lived 50, 100, 200 years ago. Our phones, we can drive huge distances. They say that the average medieval person never traveled more than 7 miles from where they were born. You just couldn't. You couldn't just hop in a car, hop in a plane, and go forever. So modern life it's easier, it's more convenient, and yet I would tell you that modern life is more complex than ever. You have more options, you have more choices, you have more decisions in any given day than a person 100 years ago would have ever had in their whole lifetime. And those decisions require wisdom. Did you ever meet someone who was super educated but made the dumbest life decisions? Don't look at them in the eye right now. You can be educated and yet be a fool, according to the book of Proverbs. In fact, did you ever meet someone who's, let's call them quote unquote spiritual, always a new word from God, always a new, I just had this crazy encounter with God, and yet somehow their life is always a mess? I'm preaching now. Listen, don't look at anybody. Do not make eye contact. Their job is always, it's always their boss's fault, and they got to get a new job, and their finances are always a train wreck, and they can't seem to hold on to any kind of friendship with somebody, that it's always some kind of drama. And Proverbs is trying to give you real wisdom for real life. You see, Proverbs, when you read it, it's insanely practical. There's very little hard laws in the book of Proverbs. There's very little about religious worship. Proverbs is about your money. It's about your marriage. It's about your work. It's about your health. It's about humility and honesty and integrity. And the thing about the book of Proverbs is it's putting the tools in your hand to take what happens in church, in your devotional time, in your prayer time, and to bring it to every corner of your life so that you can flourish. You can live a life of abundance. Proverbs 4:5-9 says this: "Get wisdom, get understanding. Don't forget or turn away from the words of my mouth. Don't abandon wisdom, and she will watch over you. Love her, and she will guard you. Wisdom is supreme, so get wisdom. And whatever else you get understanding. Cherish her, and she will exalt you. If you embrace her, she will honor you. She will place a garland of favor on your head, and she will give you a crown of beauty. I love this. He says, whatever else you get in your life, get wisdom. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm trying to get a lot of things. You're probably trying to get a lot of things. You want to get healthier. You want to get more financially secure. You want to get your work to grow and prosper. You know, we want to get Kelly's business to prosper. We want the church to prosper. I want to get enough skills and tools and insight and wisdom to be a good dad and to be a good parent and to be a good husband. And I'm trying to get 1,000 things in my life. And yet Solomon here says in Proverbs, in all this stuff, Joey, that you're trying to get wisdom. In all of your getting, make sure you get wisdom, because if you don't get wisdom, you won't be able to steward all the other things in your life. You see, if you get wisdom, you'll know how to take care of your marriage and your relationship with your kids and your work and your health. And if you can walk in wisdom, it helps you steward all the other things that God places in your hands. And so Proverbs is not so much hard laws, but it helps address the vast range of experiences that we have in life. And so sometimes Proverbs actually contradict each other, because it's not just a hard law, it's a principle that wisdom says sometimes should be applied here, and another principle should be applied here. So there's one passage, Proverbs 26, verse 4, says, don't rebuke a fool according to his folly, or he'll chew you out, basically. Let fools do their thing. The next verse says, you should rebuke fools when they have folly, so they're not wise in their own eyes. What do you do with that? It's wisdom. You see, we have, for all of our thousands of decisions every day, we need wisdom to know what moment we're in, what time we're in, what season we're in, what space are we in, and that calls for wisdom. And so the wisdom of God, and I know we're just kind of opening this up here as we open this series today, but it calls for a measure of insight that's beyond normal knowledge, beyond normal facts, and it permeates every area of our lives. Now, the thing in Proverbs is that Proverbs is very much cause and effect, right? So James read it. You bind loyalty and faithfulness around your neck. You'll have health, well-being, and a long life. Love that. Everybody loves those verses. Verses in Proverbs about that if you find wisdom, wisdom will give you profit financially. Wisdom will make you prosper. Wisdom will bless your relationships. Now, you see, this has to be balanced here. So in the wisdom literature of the Bible, you got Job on one hand, and then you got Proverbs on the other hand. Now, we preached about Job last summer. And the thing about Job is the guy who did everything right, and his life completely fell apart. And so what Job does is Job gives you the tools to navigate the unexpected, the random, the uncontrollable events in life that are outside of our hands. Proverbs is like the other side of the coin. Proverbs says there's 100 things that are within your control right now, and I want to help you do something about them. You see, the wisdom literature of the Bible, these are like two brothers. They come from the same root, but they're very different. And then you got Ecclesiastes, who's like the weird uncle or something. It's out there. I don't know. But Proverbs is this other side of the coin from the book of Job, which is cause and effect. There's a principle in the Bible called sowing and reaping. Anybody heard of this before? It basically says that if I want to wake up, open my door, and see an apple tree, I've got to plant an apple seed. And I know that's like the most profound thing you've ever heard in your life. I got to plant a seed, or at least buy a sapling, get a head start. I got to make sure it gets water. I got to make sure it gets sunlight. Got to make sure it's in good soil. Because if you want to reap something in your life, you have to sow some seeds. And what Proverbs is all about, it's about giving you the seeds to produce real fruit in your life. And so Proverbs says that if you want good relationships, prioritize people. And guess what? If you prioritize people in your life, you'll probably have better relationships than those who don't. If you want to invest your money wisely and save it, you'll probably have more money in the bank than someone who spends it foolishly. If you take care of your health, you'll probably be a healthier person than someone who doesn't. And so this is what Proverbs is about. It's about the things that are within your control, the things that are within your circle of influence. You see, everybody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to change themselves. And so listen, church, before you try to take on the world, to change things at your work, to change things at your business, to reorder things in your family, let's see this city turned around. Proverbs says, have you looked in the mirror yet? And listen, Proverbs doesn't pull any punches. Proverbs is like, how long are you fools going to keep being foolish? Proverbs at one point says, the one who hates correction is stupid. Proverbs is like, it'll punch you in the face. There are a million things in your life that are outside of your control. But there are things that you could do right now to start sowing some seeds for an abundant life, sowing some seeds for a flourishing life. And that's what Proverbs offers to us. Sowing and reaping. That you will reap the seeds that you sow in your marriage, with your kids, with your job, with your physical health. And again, Job addresses that other side of the coin, that random, that unexpected, that uncontrollable. But Proverbs says, here's some seeds. Plant them and find life. Plant them and find abundance. Plant them and find prosperity. You see that God has built the world in such a way that there is a moral grain to the universe. So that when you go with the grain, life will tend to go better for you. You will prosper. You will live in abundance. You will succeed in life. Why? Because you're going with the grain of the universe that God made. So let me read you this really cool passage here in Proverbs 8. This is Lady Wisdom talking. You see wisdom kind of personified as a woman oftentimes in Proverbs. It's this poetic way of wisdom calling out to us to learn from her. So it says in Proverbs 8:22, this really cool passage. It says, the Lord acquired me at the beginning of his creation. This is wisdom talking. Before his works of long ago. I was formed before ancient times, from the beginning, before the earth began. I was born when there were no watery depths and no springs filled with water. Before the mountains were established, prior to the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the land, the fields, or the first soil on the earth. I was there when he established the heavens, when he laid out the horizon on the surface of the ocean, when he placed the skies above, when the fountains of the ocean gushed out, when he set a limit for the sea, so the waters will not violate his command. When he laid out the foundations of the earth, I was a skilled craftsman beside him. I was his delight every day, always rejoicing before him. I was rejoicing in his inhabited world, delighting in the children of Adam. That wisdom here says, like, I was there, that God had me with him. We made the world together, that the world is made according to the wisdom of God, according to the insight of God, the knowledge of God, that God built the world in this way. And so because there's this grain to the universe, that when you sow these seeds, you reap a harvest. When you sow seeds in your relationships, at your job, in the things that you do, the work of your hands, the hobbies that you do, a right way of living, God's wise way. When we follow that, it's like going downstream. You're going with the grain. And when we resist God's good and his wise way, we find ourselves striving to make stuff happen. And it's because we're not living life according to God's way. Now, maybe you're hearing all this and you're like, Joey, wisdom just sounds like some abstract riddles that, old wizards ponder, and like, who really knows wisdom and how can we get wisdom? And, okay, there's a wise way to live. Sounds good. How do I get it? How do I get access to it? The Bible tells us that God's wisdom is available to anybody who asks for it. Did you know there's a prayer that God always answers? Listen, I got some prayers I don't have answers for yet. You probably have some prayers you're waiting on some answers for. The book of James says, it's not on the screen, James says that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask, and God will give generously. That's a prayer God always answers, and he's not stingy with it. If you ask for wisdom, he will give it to you generously, because that's the kind of God that we serve. Wisdom is not for people who've only been saved for like 50 years, probably Jesus' third cousin or something, I don't know, never sinned in your life, decades of experience. You could have gotten saved 5 minutes ago. And the Bible says God will give you wisdom generously if all you do is ask. Proverbs 1 here says this: wisdom calls out in the street. She makes her voice heard in the public squares. I love this so much. The wisdom of God for you to live a life of flourishing, a life of abundance, a life of prosperity, so that across the board, man, you're winning. Across the board, you're hitting home runs in life, family, work. This is what Proverbs is about. And this wisdom, it's not hidden. It's not secret. It's not unavailable. It's not hidden behind a paywall. It's not hidden for those who have a perfect track record for their whole life. It says right here, wisdom, it's shouting in the streets. Wisdom, it's available in the public square. She cries out above the commotion. She speaks at the entrance of the city gates. How long, inexperienced ones, will you love ignorance? How long will you mockers enjoy mocking and you fools hate knowledge? I told you, Lady Wisdom, she pulls no punches. If you respond to my warning, then I will pour out my spirit on you and teach you my words. We need wisdom so much in this life. Probably more than ever. The church needs wisdom. Probably more than ever. I personally need wisdom. Life is tricky. It's complicated. And you're not going to get a Bible verse for every hyper-specific micro decision you make every day. But God does promise wisdom to those who love him and to those who seek him. So what's the first step? What's the first step to getting this wisdom? Proverbs 9:10 is the last one I'll read to you this morning. The fear of the Lord, the fear of Yahweh, is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. You see, when we're talking about wisdom, I'm not asking you to sign up for a course in metaphysics or philosophy. I'm not asking you to sign up to be a scientist or to be an IT expert or to be some kind of guru or some monk who lives away from society. All you have to do, it says, is seek the Lord, to revere his name. And you see, this is what Proverbs is all about. It's about not being wise in your own eyes, but humbling yourself and seeking the Lord, because true wisdom comes from above. True wisdom comes from the Lord. And when you and I humble ourselves before him, he pours out wisdom on us that you and I never could have received. See, when you're in relationship with God, the pastor where I grew up, he used to say, God will make you look a lot smarter than you really are. You look at people in the Bible, wisdom figures like Daniel, like Joseph. And God gave them this level of insight and understanding into their lives and into their culture that they never could have had otherwise. And it was because they sought the Lord. And it's as you and I humble ourselves before God, as we seek his will, as we seek his way, he'll give you wisdom for your life. He'll give you wisdom for your business, for your marriage, for your kids. And man, listen, we need wisdom desperately. I need it desperately. I want my kids to flourish in every area of life. I want my marriage to succeed. I want it to be the best. I want to be the best husband that I can be, the best dad I can be. For all of you, you call City Alive home. Man, I want to be the best pastor that I can be for you. I want to help support Kelly and her business to the best of my ability. And what that calls for is wisdom. It calls for wisdom so that you and I can live this life of flourishing and prosperity and abundance that God has for us. Now, maybe you would say, Joey, I haven't been living a good life. I haven't been living according to God's wise way. I couldn't tell you a proverb if my life was on the line. Maybe you'd say, Joey, I've made bad decisions. My marriage is on the rocks. Financially, we're struggling. I don't have a good relationship with my kids. I can't seem to find a career that I really just thrive in. Maybe deeper than that. You feel like, man, my heart's not right. Maybe deeper than that, you feel like there's something in me that's not right, that it's not out there. There's something wrong in me. There's something off in me that I haven't followed God's wise way. I haven't lived according to his laws. And you feel like, man, I'm reaping what I've sown. I'm reaping some stuff. It's because I've sown the seeds for it. And what do I do now? What do I do now that I've sown these seeds? Bad decisions in life. Messed up work, relationships, family, health, and now I'm reaping the consequences. I have good news for you this morning, church. You see, sowing and reaping is a biblical principle, but it's not the ultimate principle. Sowing and reaping, and it's the gospel of God's grace. You see, sowing and reaping says, I get what I deserve. I reap from the seeds that I have sown. But there's a better principle than sowing and reaping, and it's that Jesus Christ loved me and gave himself for me. So while sowing and reaping says, I get what I deserve, the gospel says, I get what Jesus deserves because he loved me and he laid his life down on my behalf. And on that cross, he got the fruit of the seeds of sin that I sowed again and again and again. And in the gospel, I get the beauty and the blessing of the love of God that belongs to him alone. And it's the gospel of God's grace. It's the gospel of his grace. See, maybe you're sitting here and you're like, Joey, I've sown messed up, bad, rotten seeds my whole life. Is my life going to be terrible now? No, sir. No, ma'am. There's a higher law, and it's the law of liberty. It's the law of the Spirit. It's the law of grace in Jesus Christ that was poured out for you 2,000 years ago. I'm here today, not because I've done everything right. I'm here today, not because I have a perfect track record, but because on the cross, he took what I deserve, and now by grace, I get everything that he deserved. It's grace. It's his love. And as you and I humble ourselves before the Lord, he'll pour out wisdom on us. He'll guide us through the paths of life. What James read, trust in Yahweh with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your actions, know him. He'll direct your paths.